Confirming altitude adjustment.
Confirmed. Holding course.
The flight from Dubai to Istanbul began like any other routine international journey. Passengers boarded calmly, dragging small suitcases behind them, settling into their seats with the usual mixture of tiredness and relief. After takeoff, the cabin grew peaceful. Warm light washed over each row while flight attendants served drinks, checked seatbelts, and exchanged polite smiles with travelers. A few children giggled while pointing at clouds outside the windows. Families murmured to each other, and business passengers tapped on laptops or scrolled through emails. Everything felt normal, gentle, predictable. In seat 17A sat a 25-year-old girl named Kira, quiet and observant. She had long dark hair that fell over her shoulders, partly shielding her face from anyone who might try to start a conversation. She wasn't unfriendly, just accustomed to keeping to herself. Kira had boarded the flight with a small backpack and no expression except calm detachment. She spent the first hour looking out the window, lost in her own thoughts as the airplane sliced smoothly through layers of soft white clouds. Then it happened. A sudden violent jolt ripped through the aircraft. It came out of nowhere. An aggressive drop that threw drinks into the air, slammed trays against seats, and caused several people to scream. The turbulence did not feel like the ordinary bumps passengers sometimes experience. This felt like the aircraft had hit something massive, like the sky itself had punched back. The lights flickered. The overhead compartments rattled loudly, as if they might burst open. A baby started crying. People grabbed their armrests instinctively, their eyes wide with fear. A second, harder jolt followed. Then a rapid drop that made stomachs twist and forced oxygen masks to sway ominously above their heads. A few moments later, the intercom clicked. It was a sound everyone had heard many times during flights, but never like this. The usual confident, steady pilot voice was gone. Instead, there was a shaky breath followed by uneven words. "This is your captain. We're experiencing a critical systems failure. We were going down." A wave of panic erupted instantly. People gasped, cried, even shouted. A woman clutched her husband's arm as though it were the only thing keeping her alive. A teenage boy covered his ears and tried not to cry. Someone whispered prayers in a trembling voice, while another held their hands to their forehead. Stunned by the announcement, flight attendants rushed into the aisles trying to calm passengers, but even they looked terrified. Their practiced smiles had vanished, replaced by wide eyes and pale faces. They braced themselves against seats to keep from falling as the aircraft continued to shake violently. Kira's heart raced, but she did not scream. She looked around at the chaos, the terror that had taken over the cabin, the realization that hundreds of lives were now hanging by a thread. The captain's voice still echoed in her mind. "We're going down," her breathing quick. For a moment, she felt a familiar dread that she hadn't felt in years. Memories of the day she lost her father, a seasoned pilot, in a tragic accident. After that, Haya had given up flying entirely, burying her love for the sky deep inside her because it hurt too much to remember him. But now she could hear a child crying desperately somewhere behind her. She saw an elderly man clutching his chest. She saw a mother trying to hold her baby still as the plane jolted again. Something inside here shifted. She had promised herself never to fly again, never to touch a cockpit, never to sit behind controls that reminded her of everything she lost. But promises made in pain sometimes break during moments of truth. And this was one of those moments. Kira unbuckled her seatbelt. People looked at her in confusion as she slowly stood, steadying herself with the armrest. Her legs trembled slightly at first, but her eyes had changed. There was clarity in them now. A sharp focus formed from years of training she thought she'd forgotten. A flight attendant rushed to, "Miss, please stay seated. This is an emergency." Kira met her gaze with unusual firmness. "Take me to the cockpit." The flight attendant froze. "What?" Kira raised her voice, not in panic, but in absolute certainty, and in a tone no one in the cabin had used since the chaos began. "I can fly." The passengers nearby fell silent. Even through the fear, they heard something in her voice. Something steady, something real. The flight attendant hesitated, torn between rules and desperation. Another jolt rocked the plane, making a child scream louder. Kira took a deep breath, calm and unmoving. "Please, there is no time." Those words, spoken with quiet authority, broke through the panic, clouding the attendant's mind. She nodded quickly and gestured for Haya to follow. As Haya walked through the aisle, passengers watched her with a mix of hope and disbelief. Her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. Every movement brought her closer to the cockpit she once feared, closer to a decision she had never imagined making again. She reached the heavy cockpit door. The flight attendant unlocked it with shaking hands. The door opened with a metallic click, revealing flashing red lights, alarm screens, and the silhouette of a captain struggling to control a dying aircraft. And here, I stepped inside. The moment heroes stepped into the cockpit, the atmosphere changed. The narrow space was filled with flashing red warnings. the relentless beeping of alarms, and the sharp smell of overheated electronics. The dim emergency lighting cast everything in a tense reddish glow, turning the cockpit into a battlefield of failing instruments. The captain was slumped forward slightly, gripping the controls with both thumb domes, sweat dripping down his temples as he fought to steady the aircraft. His uniform was wrinkled, his breathing uneven. Beside him, the first officer was unconscious, his head tilted sideways, and a small cut above his eyebrow, hinting at how hard the turbulence had thrown him. The captain looked up when he heard footsteps. His exhausted eyes widened when he saw a young woman standing in the doorway, steady, calm, determined. "You're not crew. Who are you?" he asked, his voice strained. Pyrrha stepped closer, her gaze moving quickly across the instrument panels. Some screens flickered, others were completely dark. A few showed angry red warnings. She knew all too well. Then she looked the captain in the eye. "I'm a trained pilot," she said. "I can help." The captain stared at her for a few seconds, as if trying to decide whether he was hallucinating. The plane jolted again, nearly throwing her off balance. But she held onto the seat and kept standing. "You said you can fly?" he asked again, needing to hear it one more time. "I trained on this aircraft model. I can fly it." Her voice was steady, but her heart thudded in her chest. She hadn't been inside a cockpit in years. She hadn't touched airplane control since the day she'd sworn never to fly again. But the knowledge was still there, buried, but alive. Another violent shudder snapped the captain back into action. He gestured toward the co-pilot seat. Pyrrha slid into the seat beside him. The moment her hands touched the armrests, a wave of buried muscle memory rushed through her. The cockpit was familiar, terrifyingly familiar, but also comforting in a strange way. The panels, the layout, the controls. It was all the same language she had once spoken fluently. She looked at the captain. "What's still functional?" He swallowed hard. "Not much. Autopilot's dead. Flight computers are glitching, and we've lost hydraulic pressure on the left side. Rudder's sluggish. Some gauges are stuck." Pyrrha exhaled slowly. It was bad, worse than she expected. She scanned the panel carefully, her fingers hovering over switches she hadn't touched in years. She tested the yoke gently. The aircraft responded, but unevenly, fighting her movements like a wild animal, unwilling to detain. "I can stabilize it," she said softly. She nudged the controls, checking the response, adjusting manually. Slowly, the aircraft's shaking reduced, only slightly, but enough for the captain to notice. He stared at her, stunned. "You actually know what you're doing." She didn't look at him. "I told you. Now tell me how long he's been out." She motioned slightly toward the unconscious first officer. "About 5 minutes," he said. "He hit his head during the first drop. I tried to bring us back under control, but his voice trailed off." He didn't need to explain. One look at the flickering controls was enough. I checked auxiliary systems. The left hydraulic system was nearly dead. She switched controls to backup channels. The aircraft immediately shook in protest, but then steadied. She spoke quickly, her training taking over. "I'm rerouting to the secondary systems. Keep pressure on the right side. Don't fight the roll. I'll correct it manually." The captain followed her lead without question. He had no choice. Something in her confidence, something about the way she handled the failing aircraft was giving him strength he had lost moments ago. The intercom crackled. A flight attendant's terrified voice filled the cockpit. "Captain, passengers are panicking. What should we stay seated and secure the cabin?" he instructed. "We're working on regaining control." We, attendant repeated, confused. "Tell them we have a pilot in the cockpit," Era said without looking away from the control. "They don't need to know more right now." The captain relayed the message. Meanwhile, continued stabilizing the crippled aircraft, working through every problem one by one. She checked the engine thrust manually, adjusted the trim, reset the malfunctioning warning panel to stop the constant blaring long enough to think. Her hands were steady, surprising even herself. The plane shook again, and she reacted instantly, correcting the shows strong crosswinds. Expect a difficult landing. The captain glanced at her strong crosswinds. "Perfect." Pyrrha almost smiled. Nothing about this day was perfect. Not the sky, not the aircraft, not her return to the cockpit. But she pushed the thought aside, tightening her grip on the controls. The plane dipped slightly, and she reacted instantly, adjusting the pitch and throttling the remaining functional engine to balance the crippled hydraulics. Behind the cockpit door, a muffled wave of panic rose again. Passengers were screaming. She didn't have to see them to know. She could imagine their fear as the plane shook violently. Imagine the crying children, the trembling hands, the hope slipping from their hearts. The captain cleared his throat. "They're scared back there." "I know," Kira said quietly, "and that's why we're not going to fail." Another loud alarm erupted on her panel. The altimeter readings were jumping erratically. She tapped the screen with her finger, still unstable. "Manual. From here on," she murmured. She switched the mode and trusted her instincts instead of the flickering number. Flying blind wasn't ideal, but it was still flying. As the aircraft descended lower, turbulence struck again. Sharp, brutal. The plane dropped several feet with a heavy thud. The captain grabbed the dashboard. "That was a wind shear," he said. Another hit pushed the nose sideways. The aircraft rolled dangerously to the left. Ha fought back instantly, leaning forward, putting her entire body weight into the yoke. The plane resisted, before finally responding. "Come on, hold together," she whispered. For a moment, she heard the echo of her father's voice in her mind. Calm, guiding, reassuring. "Trust the aircraft. Trust yourself." Those words steadied her far more than any instrument could. Through the thinning clouds, the airport finally became visible. A narrow gray strip surrounded by emergency vehicles flashing red and blue lights. Fire trucks, ambulances, dozens of them. The sight sent a shock of reality through her veins. They were waiting for a crack. They weren't expecting her to succeed. The captain exhaled sharply. "They're ready for anything." "Not anything," Gira murmured. "We're going to give them the one thing they don't expect. A landing." She eased the plane lower. The nose dipped again, but she corrected it. Her leg pressed the right rudder pedal. What little of it still worked to counter the growing crosswind. The wind held against the fuselage, pushing, dragging, trying to knock them off course. "We're too high," the captain warned. "Not for long." She lowered the flaps manually, one section at a time. The aircraft groaned in protest. The worn hydraulics, fighting every angle she changed. The runway was getting closer. Too close. Too fast. Here I made a deep controlled breath. Reduce thrust. Level pit. Hold it. Hold it. The runway blurred under the nose. Passengers held their breath. The flight attendants braced themselves. The world seemed to stop moving for one impossible moment. Then the wheels slammed onto the ground with a violent impact, bouncing once, then catch. Sparks erupted from the left side, where the crippled hydraulics strained under the landing force. The plane skidded sideways, screeching across the runway. Hira fought the controls with everything she had. Teeth clenched, muscles burning. "Come on," she shouted, forcing the yoke back on core. The aircraft resisted. It wanted to drift. It wanted to spin, but Hiro refused to let it. She steadied the nose, applied brakes manually. The runway stretched endlessly ahead, but the end was coming too fast. The captain looked at her, awe in his eye. "You've got it." "Not yet," she whispered, focusing every fragment of strength on keeping the plane straight. The skidding slowed. The sparks died. The roar softened. And then, after what felt like a lifetime, the aircraft rolled to a full trembling stop. Silence descended inside the cockpit. Complete, unbelievable silence. Then, from behind the cockpit door, a sound rose slowly, crying, then cheering. Then dozens of voices shouting in relief and gratitude. It washed through the plane like a wave of rebirth. The captain let out a shaky breath. "You just saved 300 lives." Jira finally loosened her grip on the controls. Her hands trembled for the first time since she entered the cockpit. "We're not done," she said softly. "We still have to get everyone out safely." But deep inside, she knew something had already changed forever. She had flown again. She had faced the sky she once feared, and she had brought a falling plane back to the earth. The emergency slides unfolded with a loud hiss, bright yellow against the dark gray of the runway. The plane sat tilted, exhausted, as if it too were breathing heavily after the brutal fight to stay alive. Smoke drifted from the left landing gear, curling into the chilly air as fire crews rushed toward the aircraft with hoses and equipment ready. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, joining the steady flashing lights of rescue vehicles surrounding the runway. Inside, passengers were being guided toward the exits. Some moved slowly, stunned and trembling, while others hurried, as if afraid the aircraft might suddenly leap back into danger. A few cried openly, gripping the hands of loved ones, or whispering prayers of gratitude. Children clung to their parents, still shaking from the terrifying ordeal. Yet through the fear, a new emotion had begun to spread relief. Life. Hope remained in the cockpit for a few moments longer. Staring at the control, the panels were still flickering, some dark, some flashing warnings that no longer mattered. Her hands hovered above the switches she had fought with, the instruments she had coped and forced, and begged to obey her. Her breathing was heavy, her body felt drained, but her mind was buzzing with a strange mix of disbelief and clarity. The captain touched her shoulder gently. "They need you outside. They want to see who saved them." She blinked as if waking from a long dream. I didn't do it alone. You were here too." But he shook his head firmly. "No, you brought us down, not me." His voice held sincerity so deep that she couldn't argue. She stood on unsteady legs, feeling their combined weight of exhaustion and adrenaline. Her knees almost buckled, but she steadied herself and followed the captain out of the cockpit. As they stepped into the cabin, passengers who saw her fell silent. Then slowly, a few began clapping. The sound grew, spreading like fire from row to row, until nearly the entire plane was applauding her. Some people reached out, touching her arm as she passed, whispering, "Blessings, gratitude, disbelief. You saved us. Thank you. God sent you. You're our angel." Hera didn't know how to react. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed, overwhelmed. She was just a girl who had tried to stop a tragedy. She had never imagined applause, never wanted it. But the gratitude in their faces, the tears, the trembling smiles, made her heart tight. When she reached the emergency slide, the captain helped her climb out. The cold wind hit her the moment she stepped outside, carrying the sharp scent of burning rubber and jet fuel. She slid down and landed softly on the ground. A paramedic rushed forward, but she shook her head. "I'm fine," she said, her voice small but firm. "See the others first." The paramedic nodded, respecting her strength. Around her, passengers were gathering under blankets provided by rescue teams. Some were sitting, hugging each other. Others stood in tight clusters, still trying to process the miracle they had survived. Flashing lights illuminated their faces, highlighting tears, relief, and raw emotion. Then someone shouted, "There she is." Heads turned. More faces shifted toward her. People pointed. A little girl broke free from her mother's arms and ran toward Hera, wrapping her tiny arms around her legs. "Thank you," the child whispered, her voice trembling. Hera knelt down and hugged her back, closing her eyes as emotions swelled in her chest. The mother approached slowly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You saved my daughter's life. I will pray for you every day." Hera said nothing. She simply nodded, unable to trust her voice. Soon, airport officials approached, flanked by reporters holding cameras and microphone. Questions were hurled rapidly. "Miss, are you a trained pilot? How did you land the aircraft? Is it true you took control alone? What's your name? How old are you?" Bright lights flashed in her eyes. Microphones were pushed forward. She felt overwhelmed, suffocated by attention she didn't want. The captain stepped between her and the crowd. "Please give her space. She needs time." But the reporters persisted. Hera took a step back, shaking her head. She wasn't looking for fame. She wasn't looking for headline. She had stepped into that cockpit because she had no choice, because letting people die wasn't something she could live with. Finally, she raised her voice, calm and clear. "I'm not giving interviews. I'm not a hero. I just did what I could." The cameras paused. The reporters looked stunned. She turned away from them, taking a slow breath, as if reclaiming her quiet. A senior airport official approached her next, speaking gently. "We want to honor you. A ceremony, perhaps. Recognition from the aviation authorities." She cut him off politely. "Thank you, but I don't want any award." He nodded slowly, respecting her refusal. The chaos around her gradually settled. Fire crews inspected the aircraft. Paramedics treated minor injuries. Relief washed across the runway like a warm tide. Hera walked a little distance away and stood alone, staring at the plane she had just saved. The massive machine, damaged and silent now, stood like a wounded giant. She felt strangely connected to it, as though it understood her pain, and she understood its struggle. The captain walked up beside her, speaking softly. "You know you